Well, hello and welcome to the e-commerce podcast with me, your host, Matt Edmondson. This is a show all about helping you deliver e-commerce wow. And to help us do just that, I am chatting with Gareth Everard from Rockwell Razors. Well, it's a founder story today, which is great. And I'm really looking forward to digging into the whole razor thing. And it's not just about razors, is it? It's about his journey, about his story. I know a little bit because I've got the notes and it's going to be fascinating. So you're going to want to stay connected. You are definitely going to want to grab your notebooks if you're running your own e-commerce business, because I'm hoping and I'm expecting there's going to be a lot of tips coming out of this one. No pressure, Gareth. But this is what we're expecting. Now, before we get into it, if you haven't done so already, make sure you sign up to the newsletter at ecommercepodcast.net. We will send out to you every week just the show notes and stuff straight to your inbox, so you don't even have to go onto the web to get them. I don't know if I'm promoting laziness by doing this, but hey ho, it builds the email list. Come join us. It'd just be great to connect with you, great to get to know you, and why not? Come say how's it. Now, let's talk about this chap on the other end of the phone, Gareth Everard, the brains behind Rockwell Razors and the marketing force behind eco game changers like Lomi and Pela Case. With a BSc in environmental science from Western University, he's built a career turning big ideas into planet-friendly products, whether it's reinventing razors or leading eco-friendly innovations. Gareth's mission is simple: make the world a greener, better place, one product at a time. Gareth, listen, welcome to the show, man. I've been looking forward to this conversation because when I read that you were involved in Lomi, am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah.
I instantly recognized what that was. You might want to explain to the audience what that was. So let's get into that whole side of things at some point, but I'm very excited to have you here. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me all the way from London.
Yes, all the way from London. Via Toronto, now in London. But yes, thank you for having me. But happy to talk to you about Lomi, about Rockwell. Just happy to be helpful. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's just explain what Lomi is, because I was intrigued by this. I never was intrigued enough to buy it, mainly because my wife didn't want me to buy it. But I remember the products and I remember being super intrigued by it. Just explain what it is.
Yeah, so quick background for anyone listening. Like I've started a number of e-commerce businesses over the years, but I think the largest one that I was one of many kind of co-founding partners in was a brand called Lomi, Lomi.com, and it's a home composter. So it's a countertop composter. It's a device a little bit bigger than a toaster, smaller than a microwave. You pop open the lid, put in your food scraps, push a button, and it turns your food scraps overnight into something very akin to compost. And that's it. So we launched it in 2021, and within 2 years had done over 100 million in revenue profitably. So it was just this unbelievable kind of adventure. I got to be like the co-founding CMO of. It was great.
No doubt. I mean, it sounds like, I mean, it's one of those products which actually you kind of go, this is incredible. Because from memory, correct me if I'm wrong, Gareth, but you could throw anything in there, chicken bones and all kinds of stuff. Have I got that right? Or was there just certain things?
Yeah. I mean, anything other than like big bones, you're probably going to start getting into some trouble with, but like reasonable, smaller chicken bones and fish bones, that'll be okay.
It was incredible. So how did you get involved in that? I mean, was it just a one ad in the paper, or was it just people that you knew?
No, okay. So to get there, I'll probably have to back up a little bit. So take you all the way back to university. I had started a kind of side hustle with a friend of mine, and he had figured out how to sharpen Sweeney Todd style like straight razors, you know, those old timey straight razors. And we were trying to buy them from estate sales in London, Ontario. That's the smaller London in Canada. And then we were selling them on our Shopify store. And then we started trying to sell them to retailers. And those retailers basically said, hey, listen, guys, we put these razors in the window at the kind of like men's goods stores. We put these razors in the window, but no one buys them because they're too hard to shave with. People always end up buying these double-edged safety razors. And so that's kind of how we were put onto double-edged safety razors. And I started looking into the product more and realized there were these razors that were very easy to shave with. That were a lot more eco-friendly than like very plastic full cartridge razors, like Gillette, Schick, all the ones that we're kind of familiar with, Wilkinson in the UK. Those have plastic on the cartridges, and double-edged safety razors just use a recyclable single blade. And so,
and they're just really cool, aren't they? I mean,
and they look kind of cool.
Yeah.
So we figured out a way to make the double-edged safety razor adjustable, so that no matter if you have like sensitive skin or kind of more thick, curly, coarse facial hair, like what I need to shave down here, then there's kind of like the Rockwell setting for you. So we had it engineered, had some initial prototypes made, took it to Kickstarter, and then it kind of unexpectedly made $150,000 in a month, which back in 2014 was quite a large Kickstarter. And so while all of my fellow environmental science graduates were going to work in the Canadian oil sands, which is what you do with your environmental degree. In Canada, you go work in oil and gas. And I said, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go run this razor company. And so then years later, by 2018, it was kind of like stable. All the debt that we had taken on to start the business was paid off, and we were able to get a management team into place. So I had a strong, kind of stable company with a management team that gave me the freedom to go kind of explore other interests. And so since then, I've co-founded different e-commerce businesses. One was called Keto, Keyto. It's a keto diet breathalyzer, and we had some really fantastic VCs involved with that. It did really well until COVID hit, and then people just didn't care about the keto diet quite as much. And at that time, I knew Matt Bertulli, the founder of Pela Case, and we had been talking about I guess some product ideas, some different ideas around like a startup studio for eco-friendly products that we talked about. So when COVID hit, we said, this is the right time to start that startup studio. So we used the community that they had built at Pela Case and used that as a platform to try launching other products. And then Lomi was the fourth out of 4 different attempts at launching a startup that we did. And it was by far the most successful. So I ended up spending a number of years after that kind of as the co-founder CMO of Lomi, while tending to some CMO duties at Pela Case. So that was like a crazy couple of years, basically from 2021 to 2023, just about 2 years. And then I said, this is great. I've had a fantastic time kind of learning startup studio, building, within the infrastructure I built with Matt and Brad at Pela Case. And it was time to go kind of do my own startup studio on my own. So that's what I've been doing since then. And then interestingly, a part of that, bringing this all full circle, Rockwell is still doing fantastic to today. So it's kind of part of that startup studio, if you would.
So are you still? There's so much there, Gareth. Just trying to figure out where to start. So you're still involved with Rockwell. Are you still involved with Lomi and the phone case, or are you
not in the day-to-day operations, but still like a proud supporter and shareholder, so to speak.
Fantastic. Wait, you sure know how to stay busy. I mean, running 3 quite significant e-com businesses. Most people only ever dream of really running one. And you've done 3, so well done.
Well, it did definitely lead to a bit of burnout towards the end of the 2 years with Lomi and Pela Case. So there are certainly points when there's the realization that it's an appropriate time to take a step back. But really proud of kind of what's been accomplished. And we've built some companies that I think are doing genuinely really good things in the world, reducing plastic usage and diverting waste from landfill. So that's exciting to me.
No, I appreciate that, and I think Rockwell Razors. I mean, I don't really shave, as you can tell, but I remember. Actually, I used to live in a town called Rockwell. Funnily enough, when I lived in the States, and I was visiting some friends a couple of years ago. And they showed me these sort of double-edged razors that you're talking about, because I'd not seen them. I thought, my granddad used them kind of years ago, and then they just sort of disappeared. And I got very excited when I saw them back out, and I really love the product, and I thought, fantastic. It's both the way you've done it, I think, is a good mixture of sort of modern and nostalgia. And sort of, I maybe I'm of a certain age, I don't know, but when I look at the products that you've got on that website, I instantly think of, like my grandfather. That's sort of the man's man generation. I don't know if I'm allowed to say things like that, but do you know what I mean? That's the kind of imagery I have in my head. I don't know if that's intentional, but it sort of makes me go down that in my thinking.
Yeah, well, we're trying to kind of leave it if you see those kind of I guess these old timey sorts of razors. Yeah, they've appeared in films like James Bond films. They've been in a number of those. They were featured in Mad Men. I think that actually it's interesting you mentioned everything you just did, because I think that those features in media were kind of a big part of what sparked a resurgence of interest in safety razor shaving around the early 2010s. And so that's probably, that interest is likely part of the reason that the initial crowdfunding campaign for our first product did well. And yeah, beyond that, I think there are lots of safety razors and safety razor brands out there. But I think there is this perception that they're harder to use than cartridge razors. And we can get into why in a second. It's actually a brilliant marketing thing that the big razor companies did over many, many decades. But we kind of figured out, hey, if we could make double-edged safety razors quantifiably easier to use and kind of appropriate for sensitive skin, then that just will make it a little bit more approachable. And I think that's worked for Rockwell. That's why it's been kind of growing for 10 years now.
Yeah, and I imagine repeat customers to your business are quite a big part in that sense.
A little bit. So interestingly enough, the idea is that you're buying a really high quality tool once, and we sell razor blades, but we're not the only people that you can buy those razor blades from.
So
they're not proprietary.
No.
They're not proprietary. I think that's a big part of it. We make very good blades, so people often do gravitate towards ours, but I'm not losing my mind over dreaming of all the profits I'm making out of every $10, $12 order of a reorder of our 100-pack of blades. We sell them for just over 10 cents each. So it's not a huge profit center for us.
Sure.
But where I guess we do see repeat orders are someone will often buy one razor and then will not infrequently see that same customer come back and buy 2 or 3. And over just many years of kind of sending surveys to customers, we've learned that those are indicators of gifting purchases. So someone will kind of discover Rockwell, so to speak, and then begin gifting it to other people in their life.
So have you guys then? Sorry, I'm not really, because I've not really bought one of your products. I should probably go buy one. Have you guys stayed away from the subscription model? Like the Harry's and the Dollar Shave Club, or have you sort of done that with the blades and found something interesting in there, or is it just one-time purchases really?
No, we've kept away from the subscription. I mean, okay, so this is my hot take. I believe in a way, subscriptions for e-commerce, you see them pop up a lot. You might agree with me. You see them pop up on a lot of brands that you're like, I don't necessarily have to subscribe to this. And I think a lot of that was a product of the venture capitalification of e-commerce and consumer goods over, I'd say, kind of the last 10 years up until about 2 years ago. People were really looking for e-commerce, broadly speaking, to sort of fit the same economics that consumer SaaS, consumer software as a service, fits. And so they're looking for lifetime value calculations and payback period calculations and all how long do you keep your cohorts around? And lifetime value, I think it's great. Every brand you want to end up having lifetime value, but I don't think that subscription is the only way to accomplish that. And I think it was asked of a lot of brands to incorporate subscriptions in, when in reality, there's only a handful that you want to subscribe to, maybe toilet paper, cleaning products, a couple other things if you're a forgetful person. But there's not a lot of things, physical product things, I think, in a consumer's general life that we're I could not live without a subscription to this physical product. So anyways, long-winded answer on why we kept away from it. I just don't think it's a value add for the consumer. I think that you can be more successful as a brand, having respect to meet customers where they're at, and meeting customers where they're at often means make a great product and then serve them with opportunities to share that product with others when the opportunity arises. Or if they love our blades, I'd love for them to come buy enough blades to last them a couple of years. And then that's a fantastic second order to me.
Yeah, it's interesting you say this, because I mean, the default model, isn't it, is you sell something and then you sell something on subscription as well. You know, it's that kind of and the idea being, I suppose, the Gillette model. You know, you buy the razor and then you buy the cartridges on an ongoing basis to give us that ongoing income. And you do see it. You see it on so many e-commerce sites. You know, you buy this widget over here, and you can buy this thing for the widget on a monthly standing order if you want to. And some brands, like you say, it makes sense. Some brands, you kind of do feel like, well, you've added this because it's maybe a default model. I find it really fascinating where a product like yours, which probably historically would slot into that model somehow quite easily, you've intentionally avoided it, which I think is, I mean, hats off to you, sir, for doing that.
Yeah, I think there's benefit to meeting customers where they're at. If we included, I like to think if we'd included aggressive upsells to subscriptions, there's some amount of customers who would have been considering purchasing from Rockwell, who would have benefited from using Rockwell either on environmental level or at like literally just helping with sensitive skin or skin irritation problems. Because that's what Rockwell's really good at solving is skin irritation from conventional multi-blade cartridges. And there might have just been some people who said, you know what, these guys are trying to sell me a subscription. I feel uneasy about that. And you'll never know what percent of your customers are. So we just focus a lot on conversion rate of the traffic that we do get to the site. And that to me is an indicator that we're serving relevant information and making the brand and product feel approachable to a consumer, rather than exclusively focusing on like what's the 12-month, 24-month, 36-month LTV. Focus on making it a first order profitable brand, and then explore other ways that we can serve the customer, but not rely on, we'll lose money acquiring the customer on the first time, but not to worry, we've got some scuzzy subscription that they'll be hooked into, and then we'll make our money back. That's never sat right with me.
Oh, fantastic! It's quite refreshing to hear, if I'm honest with you. The not that I have an issue with the subscription model at all, but
it makes a lot of sense for a lot of businesses. I know people who've done really well with it, and have served customers really well. It's a question of like, is that authentic to your brand or not? And for me, it just wasn't.
So how did you go about finding what was authentic to your brand? I mean, 2014, you did the Kickstarter thing, and just quickly rifling through the memory banks of my head. 2014 Kickstarter was quite a new thing.
Pretty new.
Yeah, it was. I'm just intrigued. How did you find, or how have you found this voice of your customer?
Yeah, it took time. I think we had to, over time, learn more about who was drawn to the product itself. I remember originally, I really thought that it was going to be a very eco-minded kind of customer. And I think that's because I was projecting a little bit of my own interests and values onto what I was idealizing the customer that would be drawn to Rockwell. And I think there's always been an undercurrent of the customer that understands, hey, this razor doesn't have any plastic in it. It doesn't use any plastic in the blades, so therefore we're not sending a bunch of blades in plastic into landfill. That can all be recycled. But the initial traction for Rockwell was more with what I'm going to call like a buy it for life type crowd, because we made this. Our first product is this stainless steel razor, and it's genuinely indestructible. Sorry, I probably shouldn't say genuinely indestructible. Don't come after me, lawyers. I'm sure it's destructible if you really try. But like no conventional, reasonable attempts to damage it really seem to leave much of a mark. Just because it's made out of solid stainless steel, which is different than kind of the plastic stuff that we're just used to throwing away all the time. So I think that really spoke to a sort of customer, not from necessarily an environmental perspective, but there's a totally different sort of demographic of people who are like, I want high quality stuff, buy it for life, because I just want to have really beautiful, high quality things in my home. And then over time, that customers continued to exist and be interested. And we began to see a couple of those like, oh, I want to buy this because it's cool and manly, and I saw it on James Bond, or I saw it on something I kind of associate with conventional manliness. And then we've seen like the most, I guess the fastest growing customer segment is the skincare segment. So men and women are always looking for more and more ways to take care of their skin. I think there's been, especially for men, kind of an uptick in taking care of skin, just as a part of like a general health and wellness routine. And a single blade to shave with that doesn't involve any of the kind of goop and chemicals and all that that they kind of coat the cartridge blades with. That's just better for your skin. Like, you don't have all those blades pulling at your hairs. You just have a single blade, all metal, no plastics or chemicals or anything like that on the razor itself. So I think that's really spoken to customers as they become kind of more health and wellness conscious. So that's been the 10-year evolution of certainly the main customer groups that I've noticed.
And is it a case of, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, when I sort of first got back into that form of shaving, I suppose, all of a sudden shaving became less about something that I had to do quickly in front of a mirror between, shower and a cup of tea and rushing out the door, to being a bit more of a ceremony. And I noticed this actually when I stopped throwing on the Gillette stuff and just that I all of a sudden I invested in a wooden bottle with soap and a brush, and the whole thing became the old fashioned way. Do you know what I mean? And I sort of got sucked into it a little bit. And I remember standing there one morning in front of the mirror going, well, isn't this interesting that I've actually created space in my day to do this now? Like, this is some kind of ceremony versus some kind of inconvenience.
What it sounds like to me, because this is very common, is you took something that was otherwise kind of a hurried and harried experience and turned it into something that's slightly meditative for you. And I'm just extrapolating that based on your use of the word ritual. And I would say that that's extremely common. There's actually like a Reddit community called Wicked Edge that is collectors of double-edged safety razors that we've been very fortunate that they've kind of embraced Rockwell's products. And more than half of that group is people kind of sharing the brush, soap, bowl, stand, and razor that they're using that morning. They'll have a different kind of collection of different soaps, much like some men and some women will have a collection of different colognes or perfumes. Everyone kind of finds their little rituals and their little what is kind of their quiet moment to themselves during the day. And I think there's a subset of men, myself included, and it sounds like yourself, that just use shaving. I don't do it. I'll do it, but like once a week, kind of on Sundays. I had to shave my head as well. So I shave my neck, shave the beard, shave my head, all with kind of a double-edged safety razor and very high quality soap. We make a soap as well, and a brush and a bowl and all the stuff you just mentioned. So that's.
But why would you not? I mean, it's the whole thing.
Why would you not?
Exactly.
So I think there's definitely a meditative element. Just coming back to that like health and wellness piece, people finding space in their day for calm.
So, I mean, it's fascinating, Gareth, and I'm intrigued. When looking back on it now, sort of 10 years later, I suppose, just over 10 years, isn't it now, when it got launched on Kickstarter? What is maybe the sort of the top one or two lessons you've learned as an e-com entrepreneur that maybe you'd want to share with others, or maybe that you just, if you could go back in time and tell yourself, this is what you would say?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think over the years, I've learned that there's a million different things all the time in e-commerce that it feels like you can be. There's so many different apps to be thinking about, so many different. You've got email, you have your SMS, you have conversion rate optimization, you've got pop-ups that you need to be thinking about. You need to be thinking about delivery experiences. There's so many different little bits and bobs. And I definitely used to be the person who just like cycles through all the different inboxes you've got to be covering. Oh my God, customer service, then jump into this. And it's inherently unfocused just because you're trying to wrap your arms around all the different things that you could be doing and not necessarily thinking about what you should be doing, or even better, what you must do so that you don't have to do a whole bunch of other things. And I think over time, the biggest lesson has been that I can really understand what needs my focus and attention based on assessing a business based on what I call the 4 levers of e-commerce. So I'll always look at 4 main things, which is like your average order value / offer. So are you giving customers a elegant way to purchase the product? It clearly makes sense to the customer. So that's why we have starter kits on Rockwell. Like the Rockwell website is almost entirely optimized to starter kits to give you everything that you need to have that ritual shave right out of the gates. So that's me thinking about offer leading into AOV. So you want that average order value to be producing enough gross margin room that you can drive traffic to the site. And we'll come back to traffic in a moment, because the second lever is conversion rate. So if I've got this strong AOV that's got strong gross margin coming out of it, and I'm converting, it's different for every brand, but let's say on average more than 2.5% of the traffic that comes into my site, I actually know how much I can pay, not just per acquisition, which is what most people have to like live and die on their e-commerce business thinking about, oh, what ROAS can I afford? But I can actually start looking at what can I pay for traffic? Because I know what percent of that traffic converts, and every time that they convert, I know exactly how much gross margin that's driving to the business, so I can calculate what's called contribution margin. The contribution margin, as long as you're generating more contribution margin than it costs to actually run the business outside of all your variable costs and your COGS, then you're in good shape. And so then 4th lever, you can just look at lifetime value, because any extensions obviously on top of the initial acquisition, that is those are gross margin dollars that you're gathering without needing to spend additional marketing dollars. So I can kind of lay out the business at any point and say, hey, which of these things do we need to work on? And then just focus on that instead of needing to think about everything under the sun all the time and saying, oh my God, we've got to optimize everything at once, because that's not true.
It's interesting listening to you talk. I'm reminded of I don't know where I heard it, whether it was on a podcast or something, talking about Elon Musk and how his whole thing in business is quite unique in how he does it. Is like he goes to the, I don't know, Tesla or whichever one he's particularly interested in. And he goes, right, what's the biggest problem that we face at the moment? If we solve it, it's going to have the biggest, bang for its buck on our business, or it's going to have the biggest impact. He understands what that problem is, and he just works solely on that problem. Which I think is quite an interesting way to do it. And he brings in people to help him understand what the problem is, and then I guess encourages people to think outside the box. I don't know. I've not worked for Mr. Musk. But listening to you talk, I'm kind of reminded of that you seem to have gone from this trying to have an eye on everything to understanding actually what's the most important thing for me to work on in my business at the moment in the context of your 4 lever framework. Let's go do that. I don't know if I've oversimplified it, but in essence, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, well, I would say I'm definitely a far cry from Dear Mr. Musk on both an ideological and a general commercial capacity level. But that's fine. But I think my system, as it were, comes more from a recognition that if I give myself the opportunity to run myself ragged, I apparently will happily do that. So these are almost guardrails put in place after a couple hard-won lessons that unless you're kind of focusing on the main thing, then you'll focus on a whole bunch of different things, and actually very little will get done, but you'll be completely exhausted. And that really doesn't help anybody. So it makes me less of a good husband, son, business partner, everything. So energy management has actually become pretty key. And I feel like this 4 lever system is as much a business management system as it is energy management. And that's why it's just become something somewhat of a religion to me.
No, it makes sense. I'm curious, how does that work practically though? Is that like you get together with the management team on a Monday, you have some conversations around the framework, and you're kind of like, right, this is what I'm going to do this week. I mean, practically, how do you know?
I think you have to be monitoring your numbers. So if we go back into, I guess my four levers example, there would be core metrics across everything that you're looking at. The main one, I honestly just want to understand what conversion rate and traffic levels are, and CPM. So like, how much is that? How much are we paying in total for that traffic? And then you're able to monitor your media efficiency ratio. Between all of those things, you've also got your like new customer acquisition costs. There's just a couple like core metrics that we're going to be looking at, and that almost guides the conversation. Hey, we're seeing new customer acquisition go up. Why is that? Let's dive in. Okay, It's because CPMs went up. Did CPMs go up across the market? Do we think that this is just going to be temporary because it was the week of the American election? So we don't actually need to change anything. CPMs were just up because they were up for everybody. Okay, no action needed. Or is it a random week? We have no idea why CPMs have gone way through the roof. Okay, now we know that we need to dive into our individual ads. Oh, it turns out that one of the ad settings is completely wrong. And like, we're spending all this money on something that we thought was off. Or there was this ad that was performing really well, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's just not converting anymore. We missed that, and we've got to turn that off. So it almost just lets you lead sort of this, I guess, monitoring sort of system. But often, when I'm working with anyone who kind of works in my businesses at this point, people are pretty good at being proactive about, hey, we spotted this, it was affecting conversion rate. So even before the Wednesday meeting, often we're able to kind of address stuff.
So if you were starting out again today, knowing, I mean, I remember the reason I'm asking, or sort of going down this road, Gareth. I remember this conversation I had with a chap called Albert Goubet. Albert Goubet was a really fascinating fellow, very polarizing fella. Died a few years ago. An extraordinarily wealthy man, and I got to know him and travel with him a little bit. And I remember saying to him one day, he made his money in the 1960s, or he started to make his money in the 1960s, when in the UK he set up a chain of supermarkets called QuickSave. The whole idea behind QuickSave was, if you leave the baked beans on the pallet and people pick the tin of baked beans off themselves, you can charge 2 pence less. Do you know what I mean? Okay. And it was this whole kind of way of thinking about things quite differently to cut costs. Therefore, you could cut prices. Therefore, you could attract customers in. And he did really well. I mean, he went from being a barrow boy to, exceptionally wealthy guy. And I remember walking with him. I think we were in Germany at the time. And I said to him, AG, listen, I've got a question for you, and I'm curious to know the answer. If you had to begin again today, what would you do? Knowing what you know about the world, about markets, and so on and so forth. And before I tell you AG's answer, Gareth, I'm curious to know what your answer is.
I think if you're starting again, anything that's going to build a degree of community is the absolute key thing. So what I mean by that is it could be actually a lot of different things. Some people build email lists. Some people build social media followings. Some people build Facebook groups. Some people build in-person meetups. But I think up to now, or the generation of e-commerce that I grew up in, so 2014 kind of onwards into now, has been the age of, I would say, fairly cheap attention on social platforms. As in, there's all these people on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat and Pinterest and Reddit and all the other places where you have a ads product. YouTube as well, obviously huge platform. And in the grand scheme of things, renting that attention in the form of putting an ad into their content has been relatively inexpensive. Now, of course, in e-commerce, we hear all the time about people being like, "Oh, ads are too expensive. It doesn't matter. Like that's what the market is charging. So you have to figure out how to make the ads price work. Like that's just the price of the auction. There's no point in complaining. But when we get to a point where there is nothing that you can do to make things work, that means that you have to find alternative sources of traffic. And I think that's why we're seeing more and more of these creator-led brands, stuff like Mr. Beast starting brands, or brands being spun out of startup studios from big multinationals like L'Oreal and blah, blah, blah. Like they have some degree of insight around product and visibility on how they're going to be able to drive traffic. And the way that a mere mortal can kind of do that is to start a niche community. Any degree of aggregation of people's attention, of your own aggregation of people's attention that you can ultimately divert to something that you're selling, or some degree of buy button would be the key thing. So if I was starting again today, I'd likely be going out and either buying or building communities. So that's places where people with a common interest or allegiance have gathered. And I would be trying to get as much of that available attention as possible so that I own that attention rather than needing to rent it, because we don't know what the future of renting that attention looks like at this point.
That's a really interesting answer. And when you started out with Rockwell Razors, were you aware of the aspect of community then? I mean, I can imagine that actually it's built its own sense of community. You mentioned the Reddit forums earlier on, and this we talked a lot about ceremony and stuff like that, but I imagine it's sort of built this sense of community. But was that intentional, or was that just because actually you looked out a little bit, you had a great product that kind of created that community, and actually at the moment that's one of the things which is really important?
Yeah, I think I wasn't as aware of the importance, just from like purely a commerce context. That wasn't something that in 2014 I was laser focused on, because we were the age of, the Tim Ferriss 4-Hour Workweek book saying, hey, you can go start a landing page with a product that you just cooked up, and why don't you run Google and Facebook ads to drive traffic to this landing page? And if people buy that product, then you should actually make the product and ship it to them. Like, that doesn't exist anymore. That doesn't happen because you can't get 50 purchases on a landing page for something new and interesting and novel for under $500 anymore. Like, unless you're, I just don't think it's possible. But you can get hundreds of or thousands of pre-orders on a product if you've built a community. If you're launching a new barbecue and you built up a huge YouTube channel of people who are obsessed with barbecues, and you've made the perfect barbecue for those people, then you're going to have a fantastic time if you've chosen to launch a barbecue company.
So what do you think? I mean, I can just hear everybody who's sort of listening to the show, running their own business. They're going, well, this is great. What channels, I guess, have surprised you in building community? I know there's the standard channels, there's the Facebook, there's the Metas, there's obviously YouTube, which makes sense for a whole bunch of brands in so many different ways. But are they still the core ones? Are you finding traction and interest somewhere else?
I think the thing that's interesting to me most right now is truly now we're seeing the emergence of social commerce in the West, let's say. So social commerce has been how a lot of e-commerce in Asia, especially China, has been done for a very long time. And when I say social commerce right now, practically that effectively means TikTok shops, but there's no doubt that Instagram and YouTube are mere months behind TikTok. And that's where creators who have a community are able to promote products. So creators can now go out and, without needing to produce their own product, come up with a novel formulation for a skincare brand, or render CAD designs for a new, I don't know, I'm going back to the barbecue. Render CAD designs and put all the money
good.
up.
Let's stay with them. Yeah.
Barbecue's good. Render CAD designs, put up money to do all the quality control and manufacturing for 1,000 barbecues or whatever the MOQ is on this new barbecue. That attention aggregation, we can move over to creators who have the ability to in-app monetize the aggregation of the attention, which up to now has been really inelegant. So in a way, it's like the perfection of the affiliate model, and lots of brands have been built on an affiliate model. That's where a creator promotes something, says, use my code or use my link, and go to the site, and then you purchase. But there's so many opportunities to lose the purchase. So if I've done a great job, I've become a magical hat influencer, and I go out and promote this hat, and I send someone to a Shopify site, say, use my code. Don't forget to use my code when you click this link and go to this hat website. Well, I have to trust that they find a hat that they like, they add it to their cart, they pick a size that actually ends up working out, and they don't return the hat, and they have to check out, they have to remember to use my code probably, and there's a lot of clicks, there's a lot of opportunities to lose the conversion. So social shopping is conversions happening in app, whether it's right now TikTok, but I think it'll be within Instagram, YouTube, and Whatnot is another example of an app that's doing really well in social commerce. That's kind of new. It's not actually coming out of a social media platform. It's just its own social commerce platform. And so that's what's most interesting to me right now, because it's letting brands get access to other communities that have been built up and almost align or ally with many different communities in the form of working with a creator. So I just think it's communities all the way down. And even if you don't have the bandwidth to build a community, right now technology is finally emerging that lets you ally with them really easily.
Yeah. And I know it's funny, your fellow I don't know if you know Jordan West, your fellow Canadian, who's also a podcaster. He is really hot on this at the moment. I mean, just brands are doing some extraordinary things over on TikTok with social commerce. And so, it's a really big deal. Gareth, thank you so much for joining us, man. It's been great. It's been a fantastic conversation. Loved it, genuinely loved it. Super excited by what you guys are doing as well. And really, really cool. So, fantastic. What a great conversation that was. Huge thanks again to Gareth for joining me. In fact, I should do this. There we go. Yes. Bring out the applause from the cheesy sound desk. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts from, because we've got some more great conversations coming up. And of course, I don't want you to miss any of them. And in case no one's told you yet today, let me be the first. You are awesome. Yes, you are. Created awesome. It's just a burden you have to bear. Gareth's got to bear it. I've got to bear it. You've got to bear it as well. Now, the e-commerce podcast is produced by the amazing Pod Junction. Big shout out to the team, including Sadaf Bainon, that makes this show possible. Josh Edmondson wrote the theme music. And of course, as I said, if you'd like to know more about the show or all that sort of stuff, just go to ecommercepodcast.net. But that's it from me. That's it from Gareth. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a fantastic week wherever you are in the world. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.